Wake up, kid. You really think someone like you belongs in my gym?
Victor Sterling squinted, his voice dripping with both contempt and amusement. Let me guess, you're here to mop the floors, not punch the bags, right? Laughter burst through the Manhattan gym. In the middle of that cold, sterile room stood Malik Johnson, 14 years old, wearing a faded t-shirt and torn sneakers. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Well, what do we have here? Victor Sterling's voice rang out, long and mocking. He pointed toward the young black boy who had just stepped into the luxury training center in downtown Manhattan. Looks like someone got lost. The scholarship gym for poor kids is across town. The rhythmic thud of punching bags came to an abrupt stop. Every eye turned to Malik Johnson, the 14-year-old carrying a worn-out sports bag and sneakers whose soles had nearly disappeared. His dark skin stood out against the bright whiteness of the room, filled with fresh Nike gear and polished bodies. Here, a single month's tuition cost more than 3 months of manual labor, and Malik clearly didn't belong. Victor Sterling, only son of the gym's biggest sponsor, was famous not just for his punches, but for his mouth. Sharp and venomous, just like his father's. At 14, Victor already had thousands of Instagram followers. His latest post, flexing his muscles with the caption, "When you're born superior, you don't have to pretend to be equal," had just hit 50,000 likes. Sorry, Malik murmured, glancing again at the cracked screen on his phone. I thought this was the gym with the scholarship program. Victor burst out laughing. Loud, ringing, cruel. Scholarship? Oh, please. This place makes champions, not charity cases. Malik pressed his lips together. 6 months earlier, he and his mother had left Jamaica for New York, bringing with them the family's meager savings and one fragile dream: to learn boxing in America. By day, Malik went to school. By night, he helped his mother clean offices, sleeping barely 4 hours. This scholarship was his only chance for proper training. I can confirm that program exists, a voice called from the office behind them. Coach Tom Rodriguez, a man who had spent over 30 years around the ring, stepped out, holding a folder, and Malik Johnson is on the approved list. Victor rolled his eyes, throwing a disdainful glance. Seriously, Coach Tom, you planning to turn my gym into a refugee camp? Does social welfare pay trainers now? Tom's reply was firm, short, and cold. Sponsors pay for results, not attitude. But Victor wasn't finished. He strode up to Malik with a half smile, the kind of smile that only appears on faces that know they're in control. If you want to train here so bad, why not prove you deserve it? 3 rounds. If you last that long, I'll shut up. If not, he shrugged. You know where the door is. The gym went silent. Everyone knew this wasn't sparring. It was public humiliation. Malik stared straight at Victor. No fear. Only a steel-sharp glint in his eyes. I accept. A flicker of surprise crossed Victor's face. You sure about that? If I go full power, you might not even want to dream again. I'm sure, Malik said. And for the first time since walking in, he smiled. What Victor didn't know was that back in the slums of Kingston, this boy was called Lightning, because no one ever saw his punch coming. And when Tom Rodriguez caught that look in Malik's eyes, he felt something deeply familiar, that rare shiver that comes only when you're standing before true talent, forged in hunger and survival. Word of the sparring match spread quickly through the gym. Within an hour, other fighters, coaches, and even a few curious sports reporters had gathered. Victor Sterling versus Malik Johnson. A rich kid versus an immigrant boy. 3 rounds, though most expected it to end in 1. No betting, no live stream, Tom warned. It's just sparring. Victor smirked, lifting his phone. Relax, coach. It'll be quick. Might not even last the first round. He started recording for his 2 million followers. You guys won't believe this. Some Jamaican kid just challenged me. Get ready for a lesson he won't forget. Comments poured in. Crush him. Show him his place. Queen Sterling rules. While Victor soaked in the applause, Malik quietly stepped into the locker room. His hands didn't tremble, but his heart pounded. Not from fear, but from restraint. He remembered the rainy nights in Kingston, the smell of smoke, his mother's voice shouting when she saw him bloodied after his first street fight. Tom entered, his tone low and steady. "Malik, you don't have to do this. No scholarship's worth getting hurt because of some arrogant kid." Malik slid his gloves on and replied softly, "He's a two-time champion, right?" "Yeah, he's got skill, experience, and influence. And me." Malik lifted his head. "I've got something he'll never have." Tom frowned. "What's that?" Malik's voice was calm. "Hunger." The word hung in the air, heavy as a drumbeat. Tom shivered slightly. In his lifetime, he had only heard the word hunger spoken with eyes like that, the eyes of real fighters. Men who didn't fight to win, but to survive. "Why did you accept the challenge?" he asked quietly. "Why not just walk away from that provocation?" Malik closed his eyes for a moment, then replied, "Because I've lived this story before. People like Victor think they can break us with words, with contempt, with the belief that they're above us. But they forget one thing." "What's that?" "Those who grow up in poverty don't fight to win. They fight for the right to exist." Tom fell silent. He knew, in that instant, that the coming match wouldn't just be a lesson for Victor. It would be a prophecy of justice. Outside, Victor was still performing for the camera. "Look at those torn shoes," he laughed, pointing at Malik's sneakers in the corner. "I bet they've never touched a real ring. Maybe he learned boxing from YouTube." The room erupted in laughter, except for a few older fighters who sensed something different about Malik. Marcus Williams, a retired middleweight champion, whispered to his partner, "You know, I've seen that look before. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous." Victor didn't hear, or rather, refused to. "The problem with kids from the third world," he said into the lens, "is that they think hardship equals talent. They confuse desperation with skill." And right at that moment, Malik stepped out. A simple tank top revealed his lean, hardened arms. His eyes were bright, calm, unreadable. The room fell silent. The boy from Jamaica hadn't come to beg. He'd come to prove that every storm begins with a single spark. Malik's movements were smooth, precise, like a panther ready to strike. "Ready to learn, kid?" Victor asked, voice dripping with disdain. "Always ready," Malik replied, eyes locked on his opponent. Victor Sterling had no idea, and perhaps never would, that Malik "Lightning" Johnson had been fighting since he was 8 years old. Not for sport, for survival. In the dusty backstreets of Kingston, Jamaica, it was fight or starve. By 12, Malik was already defeating boys 3 years older in underground dockyard fights, trading bruises for a few bills to buy his mother rice for dinner. By 16, age no longer mattered, only fists did. And Malik, with reflexes fast as a spark, had become a legend of the streets, feared and respected under one name, Lightning. When he finally earned a visa to the U.S., Malik had sworn to himself that he'd never step into a ring again. But some oaths are made only to be broken, especially when pride is on the line. Coach Tom Rodriguez knelt to adjust Malik's gloves. He froze halfway through. The boy's hands were relaxed, but his arm muscles were dense as forged steel. Not the body of a beginner. "Malik," Tom asked softly, "be honest with me. You said you've never fought before, right?" Malik smiled, a small, almost invisible smile, but one that said more than words ever could. "Depends on how you define fighting, coach." While Victor was busy posing for his TikTok fans, people around the gym began placing silent bets in their heads, wondering how long the immigrant kid would last. None of them knew something extraordinary was about to happen, because sometimes when you look down on someone for how they look or where they come from, You're really misjudging the instincts of someone born to survive." Across the room, Tom Rodriguez watched Malik carefully. 3 decades of coaching had taught him one thing: true strength never announces itself. And in this boy, something didn't add up. His palms weren't soft like a beginner's. They were calloused and worn, the marks of years spent gripping gloves. His reflexes were too fast, his movements too deliberate. And that calmness, that eerie, unshakable calm, didn't belong to a child about to be beaten. It belonged to someone who had already made peace with fear. "Malik," Tom said as the boy finished tightening his gloves, "show me a few basics, will you? I just want to gauge your level." "Yes, sir." Malik stepped onto the mat. 5 minutes later, Tom was frozen in disbelief. Malik moved around the ring with the fluidity of a dancer. Every punch stopped half an inch before the bag, measured, calculated, controlled like a scientist's experiment. "My God," Tom whispered. "What is this kid?" The gym door creaked open. A man in his 50s, dark-skinned, his hands marked with old scars, stepped inside. "Lightning!" His voice rolled through the room, deep and thunderous. Malik froze. "Uncle Winston? What are you doing here?" "Flew in from Miami. Heard from a cousin. Didn't believe it. Had to see for myself. Thought we promised to leave this life behind." Tom turned, surprised. "You two know each other?" Winston hesitated for a moment, weighing whether to tell the truth. "I've known him since he was 8, he said finally. His eyes hardened. "And I can tell you one thing. That rich boy has no idea what he's about to face." Victor tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't obey. For the first time in his life, the undefeated star of the elite uptown gym was staring up at the ceiling lights. 10, Tom counted evenly. "Out." Malik didn't celebrate. He simply walked to the corner of the ring where Victor was being helped to sit. "You said you wanted to teach me a lesson," Malik said quietly. Not taunting, not bitter. "I just hope you understand now. Respect doesn't come from skin color, birthplace, or a bank account. It comes from character." Victor's eyes flickered. Not from dizziness, but because for the first time, he was truly seeing himself. He nodded slightly, wordless. Behind them, a few adults fumbled with their phones. The mocking story posts were still online, but now they looked like mirrors reflecting arrogance. Comments flipped, a costly lesson on prejudice. When pride meets skill, Tom stepped forward and shook Malik's hand amid the crowd. "Lightning," he said softly. "Tell me honestly, why didn't you say who you were from the start?" Malik glanced toward Victor. "Because sometimes," he answered, "people need to dig their own hole to understand how deep it really is." Winston wrapped his arms around his nephew. "You're still Lightning." "No, Uncle," Malik shook his head. "Lightning was the name I needed to survive. Today, I just showed people who I am, someone who won't accept disrespect, but fights to protect his dignity, not to destroy." 3 months later, their paths had completely diverged. Victor left the once prestigious gym and joined a small community club in East Harlem, where a hand-painted sign on the brick wall read, "Respect First." He deleted his old mocking videos and reopened his account to post clips of training with headgear, wrapping hands, and helping new kids learn the basics. For the first time, Victor learned to listen instead of talk, and realized that the ring wasn't a place to prove power, but a place to answer one question every day: who am I? As for Malik, instead of rushing into unrealistic $1,000,000 contracts, Tom guided him to register for the Junior and Youth Golden Gloves, the amateur competition system for ages 8-18 under USA Boxing. In Malik's age group, matches are typically 3 rounds of 2 minutes each, designed to test skill, heart rate, and discipline rather than raw aggression. It was the right path, legal, age-appropriate, and structured, offering a legitimate route through the amateur system, local selection, and eventually the dream of going national. The National Golden Gloves is one of the most prestigious amateur tournaments in the U.S. where many future champions began. For ages 10 to 15, the equivalent system is the silver gloves. Malik's story spread first through the local community. Small businesses contributed to a training scholarship fund, and a regional TV station requested to film a short feature about Tom's youth program. The gym itself began to transform. The scholarship sign-up list filled up fast, and a new motto appeared above the entrance: "Earn respect, give respect." Winston would visit occasionally, always with the same saying: "Hunger isn't just in the belly, it's the fire in the eyes." Tom would smile. "And to keep that fire, we need discipline and safety." Victor eventually returned to apologize. Not on camera, but during a quiet morning training session with only the sound of jump ropes and the smell of fresh tape in the air. Malik nodded. No hugs, no speeches, just a light tap of gloves, and both turned back to their corners. That's what boxing really is. The question that lingered after wasn't who won, but can a single match change not only two boys, but also how a community sees prejudice, privilege, and the true measure of human strength? Perhaps the answer wasn't in the knockout, but in the fact that the next day, both boys still woke up, wrapped their hands, stepped into the ring, and continued learning the language of respect through discipline, kindness, and steps, as measured as the rhythm of a perfect song. I was completely wrong. Victor Sterling. He said it during his first interview after nearly a year of silence. No gold microphones, no branded jerseys. Just a 14-year-old boy sitting in a small rented room, his voice trembling but honest. Malik Johnson isn't just a great boxer. He's someone I should have respected from the very beginning. My prejudice blinded me to his greatness. Of course, social media wasn't forgiving. The interview clip was edited and turned into memes. When arrogance learns humility. Once again, the internet laughed. But Malik didn't. When he heard about the interview, he smiled softly during a chat with Sports Illustrated Teen. "I'm not angry," he said. "Anger burns the one who holds it. I'd rather use that energy to build bridges, not walls." 3 months later, Malik launched the Lightning Dreams Foundation, a sports scholarship fund for underprivileged youth. The first center opened in Kingston, Jamaica, the very place where he'd once learned to use his fists just to survive. Now, those same hands that once fought to survive held a microphone, shining under the tropical sun, before hundreds of cheering children wearing brand new boxing gloves. "This story isn't about revenge," Malik began, his voice steady through the loudspeaker. "It's about dignity, about proving that respect doesn't come from privilege, but from character." The crowd erupted in applause, but Malik wasn't finished. "Victor Sterling gave me the greatest gift of my life, his contempt. Because when someone underestimates you, you have two choices. Let it destroy you, or turn it into the fuel that makes you unstoppable." Coach Tom sat in the front row, his eyes glistening. 30 years of training, and he had never seen someone turn humiliation into something so beautiful. 2 years later, when Malik turned 16, he won the USA Boxing Junior and Youth Nationals in his weight class. The knockout came in the second round, eerily mirroring that long-ago match in Manhattan. On the medal podium, Malik didn't thank his coach or family first. Instead, he said something that made the arena fall completely silent. "I want to thank everyone who ever looked down on me, because thanks to them, I learned that true strength doesn't come from where you're born or the color of your skin, but from refusing to let others define your limits." Across the country, Victor Sterling watched the match on his old laptop. When the referee raised Malik's hand, Victor smiled, not bitterly but in acceptance. He finally understood the difference between talent and greatness. Talent is what you're born with. Greatness is forged in the fire of struggle. Victor closed the laptop, stood up, and pulled on his training jacket. On the wall of his small room, a scrap of paper was taped up with a handwritten reminder: "Be better, not bitter." In the old Bronx gym, cracks still marked the spot where Malik's small hands, had once left his first glove print. Morning light streamed through the iron windows, coating the thin layer of dust in a quiet golden hue. That day, 5 years later, a new sign was hung by the entrance. Fight for Dignity Foundation, co-founded by Malik Johnson and Victor Sterling. Both were now 19. Malik, tall, solid, but still soft-eyed. Victor, no longer arrogant, his blonde hair cropped short, his face roughened by years of real training. "You still keep those old gloves?" Victor asked, pointing to the worn pair in the display case. "Yeah," Malik smiled. "To remind myself, no one's born knowing respect. You have to learn it. Sometimes the hard way." Victor nodded, a faint smile on his face. "I used to think your punch was what changed me, but it was your forgiveness that made me want to become someone better." They looked around the gym, children from poor neighborhoods warming up, laughing together. They weren't here to become champions, but to rediscover faith in themselves. The opening ceremony was simple but warm. Malik stepped up to the podium, microphone in hand, Victor standing beside him. "5 years ago, we fought to prove who was stronger," Malik said, his voice clear and resonant. "Now, we fight together, so these kids never have to prove anything except that they deserve respect." Applause thundered. On the LED screen behind them, gentle music swelled as the words appeared. "Every fight is a chance to choose who you become." That night, when the lights went out, only 2 people remained in the gym. Victor touched the freshly pasted poster, the 2 of them smiling wide beneath the caption, "The fight that changed everything." He chuckled. "If someone told me at 14 that one day I'd open a scholarship foundation with lightning, I'd probably punch them." Malik laughed, and I'd definitely dodge it. In that moment, the former rivals looked at each other, not as winners or losers, but as 2 people who had both conquered themselves. Some storms don't destroy. They build new skies. And under that new sky, 2 young men, one black, one white, no longer fought to survive, but stood side by side to teach others how to live with dignity. There are fights that end in the ring, and others that truly begin in the human heart. Malik Johnson and Victor Sterling once stood for 2 worlds that were never meant to meet. One, a Jamaican boy raised in the dark, fighting to survive. The other, an American teen raised in privilege, believing strength was his birthright. But when the final punch landed, they both learned the same truth: that what defines us isn't where we come from, but how we choose to act when we have the power to hurt someone else. And you, have you ever been underestimated or looked down upon because of where you come from or your circumstances? If it happened to you, would you prove them wrong, with anger, or with your true worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because who knows, your story might just be the spark that starts a storm of change. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what it truly means to fight, not with fists, but with heart.